Look at the keys on the table, David. Those words broke 7 years of absolute loyalty. The conference room table was polished mahogany. Around it sat 24 people from the core engineering team of Apex Logistics. At the head of the table stood Marcus Sterling, our vice president of operations. He wore a gray suit, held a gold pen, and smiled a fake corporate smile. Next to him sat Chad Harrington, 32 years old, sporting an expensive luxury watch and a deep golf tan. Chad had been with the company for less than 2 years as a senior liaison. That title meant he spent his days chatting with executives and playing golf with the board. My name is David Vance. At 42 years old, I was the principal infrastructure and database architect for the company. I built the digital backbone of this entire multi-million-dollar logistics firm from the ground up. For the last 18 months, Marcus had sat across from me in my reviews and promised me the upcoming promotion to Director of Infrastructure. He told me my work was noticed. He told me the endless late nights, the weekend system rescues, and the constant operational stress would all pay off. I believed every single word he said. That was my first major mistake in this corporate world. Marcus cleared his throat and tapped his gold pen against his glass. "Thank you all for coming on such short notice," he said, his voice echoing. "As you know, Apex Logistics is expanding rapidly. To manage this massive growth, we need fresh leadership. We need someone with a modern vision for our network infrastructure. That is why I am proud to announce our new Director of Infrastructure, Chad Harrington." A few managers clapped out of pure corporate obligation. Most of the engineering team sat in dead, stunned silence. They looked down at their notebooks because they knew the real truth. They knew Chad could barely write a basic database query, let alone manage a complex network. Chad stood up, buttoned his designer jacket, and flashed a brilliant smile to the room. "Thanks, Marcus," Chad said, nodding smoothly. "I'm looking forward to taking this team to the next level. We're going to streamline our operations and eliminate outdated legacy methods." He looked directly at me when he said the word outdated. It was a deliberate, public slap in the face. Chad had spent months taking credit for the weekly status reports my team generated, presenting my architectural blueprints to the board as if they were his own ideas. Marcus smiled warmly at Chad, then turned his cold, calculating eyes toward my side of the table. "Now, to ensure a smooth transition and demonstrate true team synergy," Marcus said, his tone dripping with fake warmth, "we need to formalize the transfer of power. David, I need you to publicly hand over your master server access keys and the root encryption tokens to Chad right now. We need the new director to have total control of the system before the end of the day." This was pure public humiliation. Marcus didn't just want to steal my promotion. He wanted to break me in front of the entire department. He wanted to show everyone that I was nothing more than a tool they were passing down to a younger, more favored politician. I felt 24 pairs of eyes turned toward me. They expected me to snap, yell, or storm out in a fit of rage. Instead, a deep, icy calm washed over me. I opened my leather portfolio, took my black ink pen, and carefully signed the physical transition logs. Then, I unclipped the Silver Master hardware token from my belt. It was the physical key that unlocked our entire national network. I slid the silver token across the polished table, where it stopped right in front of Chad's hands. "There you go, Chad," I said, my voice completely controlled. Chad picked it up, spinning it around his fingers. "Thanks, Dave. I appreciate the cooperation." I didn't correct him. Instead, I pulled out a crisp, white envelope and walked straight to the head of the table, placing it on Marcus's pen. "What is this?" Marcus asked, his smile fading. "My immediate resignation," I said. "Effective right now." Marcus laughed arrogantly. "David, don't be dramatic. Sit down. We have work to do." "It isn't a tantrum," I replied softly, looking him dead in the eye. "I am done." I turned and walked out, carrying my single box of belongings. They truly believed a title gave Chad knowledge. They had no idea they just cut the network's only operational lifeline. I got in my car, started the engine, and smiled. When I arrived home, the silence of my house was a strange comfort compared to the toxic noise of the corporate office. I went straight to the kitchen, carefully brewed a fresh cup of coffee, and sat down in the quiet of my living room. I stared out the window, letting the reality of the betrayal finally sink in. For nearly 2 entire years, Marcus had used the promise of the director promotion like a carrot on a stick. He used it to make me work grueling 80-hour weeks, forcing me to fix broken legacy databases and pull exhausting all-night sessions just to keep the company afloat. While I was locked in a server room covered in sweat, Chad Harrington was busy playing corporate politics. He spent his time whispering in the ears of senior executives, attending long lunches, and slowly positioning himself as the polished public face of my team's relentless hard work. But my immediate resignation had caught them completely off guard. The exit interview with our HR director was incredibly rushed and hostile. She was focused entirely on protecting the company's bottom line and saving money. She pushed a stack of papers across the desk, forcing me to sign a highly rigid, strict exit agreement. The agreement explicitly stated that I would provide absolutely zero post-employment support, troubleshooting, or technical consulting of any kind unless an official external corporate consulting contract was formally executed by both parties. Marcus had eagerly run into the room and countersigned the document right away. He did this because he wanted to avoid paying me a standard corporate severance package, thinking he was outsmarting me one last time. They both smiled as I signed the paper, thinking they had successfully protected themselves. What neither Marcus nor Chad understood was the scale of the operational risk they were taking. They looked at the logistics system and assumed it ran completely on its own. They truly believed that computers managed everything without human intervention. They did not realize that the entire network was actually held together by custom, uncompiled daily database reconciliation scripts. I had designed these scripts to run manually from my local workstation every single night. The purpose of these manual scripts was simple but vital. They prevented massive data collision errors across all 12 of our regional shipping terminals. Without those scripts running, the incoming freight schedules would quickly cross paths, causing the system to double-book shipments and overwrite critical tracking data. By cutting me loose so aggressively, they had ensured that absolutely no one was left to steer the ship. Chad didn't even know these manual reconciliation scripts existed. Even if he did, he didn't have the technical credentials or the deep architectural knowledge required to execute them properly. The system was now operating entirely on its own, running blind without its nightly maintenance cycle. I took a slow sip of my coffee, feeling the tension finally leave my shoulders. I was legally protected by their own greed, holding an ironclad contract that barred me from helping them. The clock was ticking, the data was piling up, and Apex Logistics was heading straight toward a massive brick wall. I leaned back against my comfortable living room couch and closed my tired eyes, fully enjoying the very first afternoon of true, uninterrupted professional freedom that I had ever experienced in 7 long, exhausting years. The corporate world mistakenly thinks it can always exploit the quiet, highly competent workers while continuously rewarding the loud politicians who do absolutely nothing but play golf, drink expensive whiskey, and steal credit for the hard work and absolute technical brilliance of others. They completely forget that modern automated systems are built by real human beings, and those systems require constant, highly meticulous daily care just to survive. Apex Logistics had explicitly chosen toxic office politics over actual performance, and now they were going to learn the incredibly painful true cost of that disastrous executive choice. I slowly set my warm porcelain coffee cup down on the wooden coffee table, feeling completely at peace with the massive structural chaos that was about to unfold across their entire multi-million-dollar shipping network over the next few days. To understand why my departure was so dangerous for Apex Logistics, you have to understand the core platform that keeps the company alive. We called it the Keystone Pipeline. It was a massive digital routing network that I designed and built entirely from scratch over a 3-year period. In simple terms, the Keystone Pipeline was the brain of the company. It tracked every single cargo truck, managed inventory schedules across 12 national shipping hubs, and automatically assigned delivery paths to prevent delays. If the Keystone Pipeline stopped working for even an hour, the entire company would grind to a halt. 3 years ago, I realized the system was growing too fast for our older hardware. I begged Marcus Sterling for the budget to upgrade our databases to a modern, fully automated cloud-based platform. I explained to him that our infrastructure was under massive strain. But Marcus completely shut me down. He told me the upgrade was too expensive and that I needed to find a way to make the current system work without spending corporate money. He wanted to look good to the board by cutting costs. Because I cared about my team and the clients who relied on us, I spent 3 months writing a custom, highly complex workaround script. This script was the secret heart of the company. Because our servers could not handle the data load automatically, my custom script had to run manually every single night from my specific administrator workstation. The script worked like a digital cleaning crew. It manually synchronized shipping orders across all 12 regional hubs, cleared out duplicate tracking codes, and wiped the temporary memory cache clean so the servers wouldn't overload. I never compiled the script into the main system because it required constant, daily adjustments based on shipping volume. The company's leadership looked at the smooth operations and assumed the system was just running perfectly on its own. On Wednesday morning, Chad Harrington decided to make his first big move as the new director of infrastructure. He wanted to show the entire department that he was a strong, decisive leader who was completely in charge. He also wanted to make sure I couldn't access the system from the outside. Chad ordered the IT security team to completely purge my legacy administrator profile from the corporate network Active Directory. He proudly told the staff that he was securing the company from a disgruntled former employee. Chad believed he was being a tough, smart executive. In reality, his arrogant move triggered a catastrophic domino effect that he could not possibly understand. The custom daily maintenance routines I had built were directly tied to my original administrator profile. The system required my unique security certificate to validate and clear the temporary database transaction logs. The moment Chad permanently deleted my profile, he accidentally revoked that master security certificate. I was sitting at my kitchen table, calmly eating breakfast when my phone buzzed. Because I had designed the system, I had set up an emergency backup alert to ping my private personal email address if the master security certificate was ever altered or destroyed. I opened the email and read the red text on the screen. It confirmed that my administrator account had been completely purged and that the core optimization routines had officially failed to launch. I set my fork down and smiled. The countdown had officially begun. The Keystone pipeline was no longer clearing its data. It was now running on a temporary cached memory loop, completely trapped inside its own code. It had no way to clear out old transaction logs, and it could no longer validate new shipping paths. The local server storage was filling up with data every second, like a water balloon attached to a high-pressure hose. Based on my calculations, the system had exactly 48 hours before the server storage hit absolute maximum capacity and the entire automated network collapsed under its own weight. I closed my laptop, took a slow sip of my orange juice, and let the clock run down. It was now Thursday, the second day after my sudden departure from Apex Logistics. The weather outside was beautiful, so I decided to spend my morning relaxing at a local park. I sat on a wooden bench under a large shade tree, listening to the birds and watching people walk their dogs. It was the first time in 7 long years that I didn't feel the crushing weight of a corporate pager attached to my belt. I was completely disconnected from their stress, and it felt incredible. But I wasn't just resting, I was preparing. I pulled out my personal tablet and began reviewing my private digital archives. Over the years, I had maintained a meticulous habit of saving copies of all my official performance reviews, email threads, and text messages. I carefully organized every single document where Marcus Sterling had explicitly promised me the director of infrastructure promotion in exchange for my extended hours. I put these files into a secure folder alongside a clean PDF copy of the rigid exit agreement the HR director had forced me to sign. The agreement was crystal clear. I was legally prohibited from performing any troubleshooting, support, or network administration without a signed, high-paying external consulting contract. I knew exactly how valuable that piece of paper was about to become. I was quietly loading my weapon, and my leverage was absolute. Meanwhile, back at the Apex Logistics headquarters, Chad Harrington was living in a completely different reality. He was riding a massive wave of unearned confidence. That very afternoon, Chad hosted a major corporate presentation in the executive boardroom. The meeting was incredibly high stakes, attended by the entire executive board and several of our largest international shipping clients. Chad wanted to use this platform to solidify his new position and impress the senior leadership. During the presentation, Chad projected bright, colorful charts onto the wall. He boldly claimed credit for a 12% increase in network system efficiency over the past quarter. He smiled at the board and falsely stated that by removing my outdated operational oversight and streamlining the IT department, he had already saved the company massive amounts of overhead money. He painted me as a lazy, old-school manager who was holding the company back from true progress. While Chad was speaking, a friendly former colleague from the engineering team secretly sent me a text message from inside the conference room. He described the entire scene, telling me how Chad was completely burying my name and taking full credit for the architecture I'd spent years building. He told me that Marcus was sitting right next to Chad, nodding aggressively and smiling while the entire board of directors clapped. I read the text message while sitting on my park bench. I didn't feel a single flash of anger. I didn't feel the need to call them, defend myself, or scream. I simply took a screenshot of the text message, saved it directly into my evidence folder, and turned my phone face down on the bench. I knew something that Chad and Marcus completely ignored. I knew that while they were busy celebrating their fake victory in the boardroom, the primary database servers were rapidly suffocating. My remote dashboard app showed that the server cache was currently sitting at exactly 89% capacity. The data balloon was stretching to its absolute limit. The incoming transactions from hundreds of shipping terminals were piling up in the temporary memory banks, unable to find a clear path to register. The walls were rapidly closing in on them, and the entire executive board had just applauded the man who was about to accidentally destroy their company's operations. I picked up my phone, put on silent, and walked over to a nearby coffee shop to enjoy the rest of my afternoon in perfect, undisturbed silence. That on Thursday morning, exactly 72 hours after I walked out of Apex Logistics, the digital ticking time bomb finally exploded. I sat at my kitchen counter with a fresh plate of eggs, watching my private monitoring dashboard on my personal tablet. The little storage bar for the core database didn't just turn red. It hit 100% capacity and froze solid. The custom code had officially choked. Without my daily manual scripts to clear out the old memory logs, the Keystone pipeline simply ran out of room to breathe. The primary fulfillment hub in Chicago was the first to take the hit. Because the database could no longer clear out completed transactions, it started recycling old data. It began generating identical, duplicate routing numbers for entirely different incoming freight trucks. Two different drivers across the country would receive the exact same digital token to park in the exact same loading bay at the exact same time. It was a complete disaster in the making. Chad Harrington, possessing absolutely zero real engineering knowledge, looked at the initial error reports and assumed it was just a minor, temporary software glitch. He didn't want Marcus or the executive board to find out that the system was already breaking under his new leadership. So instead of calling for technical help or pausing the incoming queues, Chad made a fatal, arrogant mistake. He picked up the phone and ordered the regional hub managers in Chicago, Detroit, and Indianapolis to completely bypass the automated system blocks. He told them to force the trucks through manually. This reckless command forced thousands of conflicting data packets into the main database at the exact same time. In the world of database architecture, we call this a catastrophic data collision. It is like trying to force 10 fast-moving trains onto a single track simultaneously. By midday, the three largest shipping hubs in the country were completely paralyzed. The automated gates locked shut, and a massive logistical bottleneck of hundreds of semi-trucks began stretching for miles down the interstate highways. My phone buzzed with frantic text updates from Leo, a senior developer who was still trapped inside the building. He told me Marcus Sterling had just found out about the highway gridlock and completely lost his mind. Marcus called an emergency crisis meeting in the war room, slamming his fists on the table and screaming at Chad to fix the system immediately. Leo said Chad looked completely pale, his expensive suit soaked in sweat. Chad finally attempted to log into the back-end database to see what was wrong, but the custom, uncompiled architecture I had built left him completely baffled. He couldn't even find the primary data tables. Marcus, running on pure, unadulterated panic as the board demanded answers, stood over Chad's shoulder and ordered him to execute a forced hard restart of the main production servers. This was the absolute worst possible thing they could do. A hard restart, while thousands of corrupted data packets are actively colliding, completely destroys the index files. It is like ripping the plug out of a computer while it is trying to save a massive, critical document. The moment Chad hit the button, the active database table shattered. The corruption spread instantly, paralyzing the East Coast hubs within minutes. The trap had snapped shut, and the two executives had just destroyed their own company. I watched the dashboard turn completely black from my kitchen counter. The regional status lights flickered out one by one. First New York went dark, then Atlanta, then Miami. The entire multi-million-dollar logistics network was completely dead, and it hadn't been caused by an outside hacker or a natural disaster. It had been caused entirely by the sheer incompetence and blinding arrogance of the leadership team. Marcus and Chad had truly believed that anyone could sit in my chair and press a button. They had treated my technical expertise like a cheap commodity that could be easily replaced by a polished smile and a golf handicap. Now, they were sitting in a dark war room, surrounded by flashing red warning lights, staring at a shattered system they had absolutely no hope of ever understanding. I finished my breakfast, washed my plate in the sink, and smiled as I realized that the true cost of their betrayal was about to be deducted from their corporate bank accounts. I woke up on Friday morning to a chaotic explosion of digital noise. The moment my alarm went off at 7 o'clock, my smartphone began vibrating violently against the wood of my nightstand. The screen lit up in a continuous, blinding flash of desperate notifications. The great corporate avalanche had officially begun. The first wave of messages started with polite, deeply strained emails from the HR director. Her tone had completely changed from our hostile exit interview. She was no longer acting tough or demanding. Instead, she was subtly begging for what she called a quick, informal clarification on our database architecture and password protocols. She claimed it was just to help the team clear up a minor communication issue. I didn't reply. I simply swiped the email away and walked into the kitchen to make breakfast. Within 30 minutes, the polite corporate mask completely slipped. The messages shifted from desperate HR emails to urgent, aggressive text from Chad Harrington. He didn't even bother with a greeting. He sent a wall of capitalized text ordering me to immediately transmit the master root recovery passwords and the secret source code for the daily reconciliation scripts to his personal phone. He claimed that withholding company data was a serious violation of policy and threatened to involve the corporate legal team if I didn't comply within the hour. I chuckled softly to myself as I flipped a pancake in the pan. Chad was still trying to act like a powerful boss, completely blind to the fact that he had absolutely no leverage left. Then, the heavy artillery started. The phone began ringing continuously, and the caller ID showed the direct office number of VP Marcus Sterling. While I let it ring out, he called again and again. I remained perfectly detached from the panic. I calmly ate my breakfast, washed the dishes, and laced up my running shoes. I stepped outside into the crisp morning air and went for a long, peaceful 3-mile run through the park, leaving my phone sitting on the kitchen counter. I let the device ring itself to death while I enjoyed the quiet rhythm of my steps. When I finally returned home and took a shower, I picked up the phone to check the final damage. By 3 o'clock in the afternoon, my screen displayed a truly stunning total of exactly 107 missed calls. The financial reality behind those 107 calls was absolutely brutal. My former colleagues' text messages confirmed that Apex Logistics was now hemorrhaging roughly $200,000 every single hour the logistics network remained frozen. Trucks were stranded across the country. Frozen food was rotting in delayed containers, and 3 of our largest international retail clients had just issued formal legal notices threatening multi-million-dollar lawsuits for immediate breach of contract. The company was bleeding out on the floor, and the executive board was in total chaos. At exactly 3:30, Marcus Sterling sent a final, frantic text message that completely abandoned every single ounce of his former corporate arrogance. The man was practically on his knees. He told me that he was sorry for the misunderstanding in the boardroom. He begged me to accept an emergency independent consulting fee of $10,000 just to log into the network for 10 short minutes and clear the corrupted data queue. He promised the money would be wired to my account instantly. I stood in my kitchen, looking at his desperate text. I didn't feel angry, and I didn't feel smug. I just felt a deep, profound sense of professional justice. I opened my tablet, selected a single digital file, and hit reply. I didn't write a single word of explanation. I simply attached a high-resolution PDF copy of the rigid exit agreement that Marcus himself had so eagerly countersigned just days ago. I used a bright yellow digital marker to highlight the exact clause stating that I was strictly and legally forbidden from touching their network or providing any technical support whatsoever. I hit send, watched the message deliver, and turned off my phone for the weekend. By Sunday night, the corporate house of cards had completely collapsed. The operational disaster had escalated to the absolute highest level of Apex Logistics Solutions. Our CEO, Arthur Pendleton, who had been working remotely in Europe to finalize a major international trade deal, was forced to cut his trip short and fly back immediately on a private jet. The company was facing absolute ruin. The board of directors called an emergency Sunday night meeting to address the total destruction of their network infrastructure. Recognizing that Marcus and Chad were completely paralyzed, trapped in their own lies, and unable to give a straight answer about the cause of the national network blackout, the CEO decided to bypass them entirely. He used his executive authority to look through the old corporate HR records, track down my personal email address, and sent me a direct, desperate plea at 9 o'clock that night. The email was simple. David, we are bleeding millions of dollars every hour. The board needs the truth. Please join our emergency video conference in 10 minutes. I will personally guarantee your time is compensated. I read the email calmly, adjusted my collar, and clicked the secure video link. I did not turn on my microphone or my camera initially. I agreed to log into the call, but only as a silent, passive observer. The moment my profile face appeared on the grid of the massive boardroom screen, the energy in the room shifted instantly. Marcus Sterling looked up, his face turning an unhealthily dark shade of red. He was surrounded by exhausted board members in rumpled suits. Running on pure panic and looking for a quick scapegoat to save his multi-million-dollar career, Marcus immediately snapped. He pointed a shaking finger at the conference room camera and attempted to deflect all the blame away from his department. "Arthur, there he is," Marcus shouted, his voice cracking with desperation. "That is the man responsible for this entire disaster. David Vance is the one who did this to us." The moment we gave the promotion to Chad, David went rogue. He installed a malicious digital time bomb in the database system core before he quit out of pure spite. He did this to sabotage the company, and he is holding our data hostage right now for money. Chad Harrington nodded aggressively next to him, sweating heavily through his designer shirt, trying to look like an innocent victim. The board members leaned forward, staring at my video box with intense, angry eyes. I did not blink. I did not raise my voice, and I did not get defensive. I remained perfectly calm, taking a slow, measured breath. I looked directly into the camera lens and spoke with absolute clarity. "Arthur," I said, addressing the CEO directly, "I have not touched the Apex network since the moment I handed over my physical keys. With your permission, I would like to share my screen and show the board the official, unalterable system logs." The CEO nodded grimly, clicking the authorization button on his laptop. I shared my screen, bringing up the automated system audit logs that had been securely mirrored to my private archive server before my account was removed. As the board can clearly see on this timeline, I explained, my voice steady and cold. On Wednesday morning at precisely 9:42 a.m., Chad Harrington logged into the Active Directory. He did not run a system diagnostic. Instead, he manually deleted my master administrator profile. By doing so, he instantly revoked the master security certificate that authorized the automated daily cleaning routines. I clicked to the next slide, displaying the internal system data. When the server memory filled up on Thursday, Chad explicitly ordered the regional hubs to manually bypass the system block. That action caused the massive data collision. And finally, right here, you can see the command log where Marcus Sterling ordered a forced hard restart of the active production servers at 2:15 p.m., which permanently corrupted the primary database tables. They broke the machine, Arthur, not me. To deliver the final blow, I brought up the official HR exit agreement, zooming in on the signature page. And this is the document Marcus and HR forced me to sign to deny me severance. It explicitly forbids me from accessing the network or providing any troubleshooting support. I am legally barred from fixing the mistake they made. The executive boardroom fell into a terrifying, dead silence. The CEO watched the screen in absolute horror as the irrefutable data laid out the truth. The realization hit him like a physical blow. He slowly turned his eyes toward Marcus and Chad. The two corporate politicians completely broke down right there on camera. Marcus began screaming at Chad, blaming him for deleting the profile, while Chad fiercely yelled back, accusing Marcus of forcing him to hit the server restart button. They traded frantic, panicked accusations, exposing their own absolute ignorance in front of the entire board, while I sat in absolute, beautiful silence, watching the two men who stole my hard work tear each other to pieces. The final corporate execution was swift, clean, and utterly devastating for my antagonists. The video call did not even last another 5 minutes. The CEO, Arthur, did not want to hear another single word of their pathetic excuses. He raised his hand, silencing the chaotic screaming, and fired both Marcus Sterling and Chad Harrington on the spot for gross corporate negligence, severe financial mismanagement, and attempting to maliciously frame a former employee. He ordered corporate security to escort them out of the headquarters building immediately and stated that the company would be pursuing full legal action against them for the millions of dollars in lost revenue. With the logistics network completely dead and the entire company facing immediate operational ruin, the board of directors turned their desperate eyes back to my video screen. The CEO cleared his throat, his tone completely humbled. He apologized sincerely for the way I had been treated by the management team. Then, the board immediately offered me the official position of Vice President of Global Infrastructure. They offered me a massive six-figure signing bonus, a doubled salary, and full equity ownership options for my proprietary database algorithm. They were ready to give me everything I had ever wanted, all to save them from the fire. I listened to their grand offer patiently, remaining completely expressionless. I did not smile, and I did not get excited by the massive numbers they were throwing at me. When they finally stopped talking, I calmly declined the full-time corporate role. I told them I had absolutely no desire to return to their corporate ladder or deal with their internal politics ever again. Instead, I dictated my own terms as an entirely independent external consultant. I laid out my conditions clearly. If you want your logistics network restored, I will work only as an outside contractor. My new rate is a flat $500 per hour, billed in full hourly increments. There will be a mandatory minimum monthly retainer fee paid up front before I write a single line of code, and I demand absolute, written veto power over every single future hire in the IT and engineering departments. If you accept these terms, I can have the Chicago hub online by tomorrow morning. If you do not, I wish you the best of luck with your client lawsuits. Left with absolutely zero alternatives and losing $200,000 every hour, the board did not even hesitate. They eagerly voted, signed a new external consulting contract, and wired the initial retainer fee to my bank account within 15 minutes. The story concludes on the following Monday morning. The sun was shining brightly as I walked back into the Apex Logistics headquarters. The office atmosphere was completely changed. It was incredibly quiet. I stepped on a main corporate floor, walking slowly past the empty, completely cleared-out desks of Marcus Sterling and Chad Harrington. Their personal pictures and golf trophies were gone, replaced by empty cardboard boxes. The corporate politicians who had spent years stealing credit and playing games had been permanently erased from the system. I walked down the long glass hallway, heading directly toward the main server room. I used my new external security badge to unlock the door, listening to the familiar, deep hum of the cooling fans. I sat down at the primary terminal, opened the secure interface, and easily reinstated the master security token. With a few swift, precise keystrokes, I launched the manual database reconciliation scripts I had built. Within minutes, the frozen shipping queues began to clear, the digital routing blocks vanished, and a massive logistics network slowly hummed back to life. I stood up, walked over to the large glass window, and looked out over the quiet office floor. I took a deep, satisfying breath, reflecting on the ultimate lesson of my journey. True technical competence, quiet patience, and ironclad preparation will always triumph over arrogant corporate politics.